We've seen this wasteboard in just about every single laser video that we've produced, and I think it's time for a change. Now it's actually two pieces. We've got this smaller piece that helps support the window that goes into this fume collection box, and then there's the larger piece underneath that. So let me pull that out real quick. Set this aside and pull this out. Set it down. Here's what the laser looks like, just sitting on the table. And I had an idea. We could make our laser more like the big boy lasers. Let me show you what I've purchased here. Alright, here's what I've purchased. It's basically just a honeycomb shaped base, and this is for a different brand of laser. It's a smaller laser, and I thought I could somehow incorporate that into my laser. Now there's two ways I could do this. I could have it in here, something like that, which is in a similar orientation to how I do the wasteboard now. The other option is to turn it 90 degrees. I don't need it exact, but something more like this. Now that does leave quite a bit of space behind the laser that it wouldn't be used, but that's really no different than the wasteboard that I currently use. Most of the things that I burn are not larger than this. And if it was larger than that, I probably don't need a wasteboard for it either. Not necessarily true, but probably the case. So I need to decide which way I'm going to do this. I can have it up here somewhere or turned. If I was really clever, maybe I could have it set up so I could do either of those. What I'm going to need to do is cut a hole in this board that I'm using as a table for the laser. And I'll need to cut it so that I have a piece that comes out and that this honeycomb drops in. What I could do is also cut it this way and have it so those pieces could come in and out. I like that idea. Maybe that's what I'll do. Anyway, that's the direction that I'm going to go, and I wanted to get a before picture, so this is what it looks like before, and not quite sure what I'm going to do underneath. So underneath the table, this looks like that. Now that bracket holding it up is probably going to be in the way once I do the hole. I do have a leg over here. It's just kind of a temporary stick holding the front end up. So there may be some reconstruction needed down here as well. Things to look at. The reason for cutting a hole on the table so that that expanded honeycomb thing fits down in there is so that I can create a downdraft ventilation for the laser. So what I'll be doing by cutting the hole here, I'll need to build a plenum underneath the table that fits that shape, and then I'll be hooking up an exhaust fan to that and then exhausting the fume so it'll draw the air down through the project. That'll also help when I'm cutting the paper kind of stuff like this that we did in a prior video. When we're cutting through the paper, one of the issues is these little chads will pop off and then sit somewhere on top of where you're going to burn, and then it prevents the laser from burning your material. So by creating that downdraft, that should help hold the paper in place as it's lasering. It'll also, it'll draw that smoke down. Another project that I want to work on is some sort of air assist, but that'll be a different video. So we'll have the air drawing down, and we'll need to rebuild this box. I built this out of just some foam core material, and it got a little humid this summer, and the foam core warped. I didn't think that would happen, but it did. So it doesn't fit real properly, and trying to get it straightened out would be a nightmare, so we'll need to be rebuilding this box as well. So the plenum underneath, That's going to be a project. Not sure if I'm going to try to do some tin bending or build it out of cardboard, build it out of foam core, plywood. I don't know. We'll see. After turning my brain on and actually thinking about this for a while, it does make quite a bit of sense to have two orientations for my new Honeycomb downdraft filtration laser wasteboard. I think that this will be the main orientation. Most of the stuff I do is not that big, and we'll just leave it like this. If I need to do something vertical, what I like to do is be able to turn this and have it over here. The problem is then there'll be a gap where the air will get sucked down, or there'll be a gap up here where the air would get sucked down when it's not in that position. By cutting exactly this rectangle here, and then initially I was thinking of putting it in the middle, something like that. It's like, well, that would work. The problem is then I would have a little gap on this side and a little gap on this side. And yeah, my brain kicked in. It's like if we slide this over so that it's at the same width, so this edge is right where it would be when it's turned this way, essentially making a big giant L. Then we'd have a piece that can be pulled out of there and then placed here to cover up the hole in this orientation. When it's in the other orientation, it comes out, this gets spun around, and it gets placed up there. So that's what I'm looking at doing. I'm not sure if I want to be on this side or this side. I'll have to think about that. Really not an advantage or disadvantage either way. Having this basic L-shaped, then with a piece that I can move back and forth, that'll be awesome. And I will keep the main piece as well, so that there'll be two pieces, one that'll fit the gap, one that'll fit this big area, and I can go back to just not using this and just a standard wasteboard if there's ever a reason for that. That's the direction I'm going to go. The next step will be just to kind of sketch this out and cut the board. I've removed my smoke containment box so that I have more room to work. This is the basic orientation for my Honeycomb wasteboard, and I need to then cut a hole through this table in this orientation. I talked about making an L, so what I want to do is just mark this. So I'm going to take a pencil and mark the edges. Now I will pull this out, and I don't know if you can see, but I've got the nice clear marks here. This front one didn't come out as dark as I'd hoped, but there's enough there to at least see it. I do have a little piece of neoprene back here that's in the way. It helps keep the laser from sliding around on this smooth surface. And I guess I really don't need to have the laser here, or this particular part, other than I do, because there's a limit over there to how far I can go over. So you can see this curve. This is longer than my laser is, so it essentially hits the edge. So what I'll need to do is, that's as far over as it can go. We'll just back it off a little bit. Okay, and this is where I guess the laser really does need to get pulled out of the way. So we'll unplug the power, and we'll unplug the USB, and this should just lift up out of the way. Get my cable counterweight down here, those neoprene pads off, and this can move. Now this is where I need to have this, so I'm going to kind of square it up with that line. So essentially from this line I'll need to come back basically 7 or 8 millimeters. So let's just get this lined back up with our things, and then we'll just slide it over. And some of you are saying, why are you spending so much time doing this? You could just take the laser and move it over. I have a limited amount of space here, and I'm going to need room for a new box on top, and then I'm also going to have to build a plenum underneath here to capture all of this. So I want to get this in the right spot. So let's just take some time to work on that. Okay, turns out this thing is not square. Just looking at how these lines are coming out, this is not square, which is fine. That just means I need to cut both of these slightly larger. That'll also help with these pop rivets so that they fit in there. But what I want to do is get as close as I can to an actual, square thing here. Essentially, I just need to get this top measurement. The sides just a little bit here as well. So we can see the basic L shape we've got here. So what I'll need to do is cut that out. I want to keep some meat in the front here. The back of this will be supported a different way, so that's nice and sturdy, and it'll leave room for my my plenum underneath there to draw the air down. The next step then will be to get this table cleaned off, get it unattached from the wall, and get it out to the garage where I can cut this. And I'll need to figure out how I'm going to cut this with the tools that I have. When I put the exhaust in for my fume box, I was able to retask this fresh air inlet and use it as an exhaust. The problem with that turned out that right next door to it here is we have the new fresh air intake for our air exchanger. So that became a problem. So what was happening was the exhaust was coming out of this icky stuff and getting sucked right back into the house by this. With the new downdraft Wasteboard, what I want to do is put in a new fan and a new line. And let's go take a look where that's going to come out. In the front of the house, we've got cinder block, part of the foundation. And then there's a chunk of wood here where this outlet is. And then we have the front steps for the front porch here. And what I'm going to do is I have access to the back of this board in the house. So I'll put a hole here and then put a vent cover on that somehow. Screw it on, put some caulking on it. And then I'll be able to hook up the new ventilation pipe inside the house to that area. That's the plan. Doing a quick test fit before I built the box underneath here that will not only support the new Wasteboard, but it will also be a place for little pieces to drop down into. I had forgotten about these two pipes. I was just going to do a square box. It just kind of went like, followed these dimensions, and then was going to be 8 inches deep. The problem is I don't have 8 inches deep here, so I'll need to build a box that has a shallower section here for when I'm running the Wasteboard vertically, and then the full 8 inches deep here when I'm running it horizontally. Okay, so back to my sketching. Get that figured out. That shouldn't affect the amount of wood I need, just how I cut it. The original plan was just to make a basic box 8 inches deep with a bottom on it, glue that to the bottom of my table where I've got the cutout. Once I found that the pipes were going to be in the way, I had to make an adjustment to that. So no longer just a basic box. It was going to be more of a complex box. So we have the deeper box, and then we have this little shallow part over here. It became more complex. I can still make it out of one piece of material. I just kind of did my quick list down here of my dimensions and my pieces, and then I sketched that out onto a piece of paper, and if I did my math correctly, I can get all those pieces out of a 2x4 piece of MDF, and that includes the 1/8 inch kerf for the saw. So have to go to the hardware store, pick that up, and do some cutting. After thinking a little bit further on this, I decided to change this box so it's not so complicated. I really don't need to let's take a look at this one. This whole little knockout thing here, there's no reason it can't go all the way across. And that simplifies this design. So that's essentially what I've done. Is we've just gone back to what I was going to do originally, but instead of having it be 8 inches deep all the way back, we'll just have it come up here and only be 3 inches deep for this back section. That simplifies this. I still can fit it in a 2 foot by 4 foot sheet of MDF and have plenty left over. So I think this is the direction to go. Here's how I've nested the parts onto the sheet, at least in my drawing. In theory it should work. And if we take a look at the sheet here, I don't know if you can see, but I have the lines drawn in here. Those lines, and that all corresponds with what I have drawn out here. So the next step is to see what I can cut on the circular saw with a table saw, and some of the stuff I might have to get the skill saw out. We'll see. Anyway, I won't bore you with cutting wood. I will resume once I have my pieces, and then we can start gluing this together. There, the pieces cut out. Now to get them glued up. Okay, here are all the pieces glued and screwed together. This is going to be our tray underneath our table. Now this is my attempt to get the box mounted to the bottom of the working table. So I glued and screwed some straps on there, glued the box to those, put a bunch of extra glue on there, and I will, when this dries, I will screw it a little bit from the inside out to those straps. That should hold it in place. Here's the updated table. We have our hole now where we can put our honeycomb wasteboard. And if we look underneath, we can see that the pipes are being circumnavigated. And we've got our big box. I have not yet drilled the hole here for the exhaust, for the new exhaust. That will go in at some point. Here it is. Let's put the honeycomb in place and take a look at that. Here's the honeycomb wasteboard in place. And back behind here, I do have a board that fits in that opening, so that'll cover that up, and then most of the air ends up getting drawn through here. So you see my hand down there, and then that will exhaust out the side once I get that part installed. This wasteboard can also go in the other orientation. So we can just easily flip that around so it goes vertically or in and out in our Y direction. That board that fits in the back corner then will fit right here. I should go grab that out of the garage and we can take a look at that. We also then have this secret hiding spot back here for who knows what. Here we have the Honeycomb wasteboard in place, and we have that extra piece set up in the back. That way, as the exhaust fan is drawing air down, it'll draw through here, and this area it will not draw through. The piece here will also fit over on the side when this is rotated in the other position. Let's take a quick peek at that. Here it is in the other configuration. So again, it's all open underneath here, and this then closes off this gap. Now you will say, well, hey, there's this big gap here, but if you look down, there's nothing there. That's actually part of what holds this whole thing up. So it's not an airtight seal by any means, but it will keep a majority of the air from flowing through and allow it to come through our honeycomb. We can also put both pieces back in here if for some reason we didn't want to use the honeycomb and go back to the old setup. Let's take a look at that. Here we have the honeycomb gone, and both areas are now blocked with the pieces that got cut out of there. So this will work real handy if we want to go back to this method, if we're burning something bigger than this honeycomb or some other reason. The next step is we have to get this board secured to the wall. Right now it's being held in by gravity and friction, and it can fall over any second. So let's get that secured on. To secure this, all I did was I drove 3 screws through the board into this 2x4 cleat that's on the wall, and that should hold it well enough for what we need to do. It just keeps it from coming out this way. The support is done by that 2x4 across the back, and then we have these 2 spindly legs in front, and that holds up nice here. Let's get this put back together. All set back up like it was, for now at least. We've got the 3018 Pro inside of its nice little box, and then we have the LE 5040 inside of its box. Let's get a little light in here. So it sits on top of that new wasteboard just fine. So that'll work especially well once we get the new ventilation hooked up. For now, that's where we're going to leave it. We'll still use this top ventilation with the old box. We just ventilate that up and out that way. I hope you've enjoyed this transformation. I look forward to using the new setup, especially when I get the new ventilation hooked up. If you like this video, please think about giving it a like. That does help the channel out. And if you like our content, please subscribe. And as we put new stuff out, you will see that. So, until next time, enjoy doing your CNC at home projects.